Young, wild, and free. That was the motto and the mindset. Drink up and enjoy while you can, because life's short and youth is fleeting. And I certainly did just that. High school, college, and well into my 20 somethings. Whenever I wanted to party, I did. Whenever I wanted to get drunk, I did. That in itself is a privilege, and not everyone in the world lives that way. I distinctly remember in high school, on the rare occasion in which there was a party with a quote unquote mixed crowd, most of the white kids drank and turned up to their heart's content, singing, dancing, laughing, putting on a shit show if they so pleased. Most of the black kids, however, not so much. Normally, they were much more mellow, composed, maybe a few beers, maybe a shared joint or two. It was a distinction that everyone was aware of. Most of us figured that it was just a cultural difference. Maybe their parents were more strict, maybe binge drinking wasn't as cool to them. But now, looking back, hindsight being 2020, it's clear that there was probably much more at play. Welcome to Stone Cold Moderation, a thinking man's journey toward a healthier relationship with alcohol. I'm your host, Chase Lee. Let's continue with our discussion. On average in the US, blacks start drinking at an older age, drink less than their white counterparts, but suffer worse health, professional, and social consequences for their consumption. So, as much as I would like to think that my black classmates weren't drinking because they just didn't want to, that was likely not the case. Because, sure, maybe they get into trouble with their parents when they get home, or maybe they get into trouble with the police. In all likelihood, they understood that they were less likely to get away with underage drinking than their white classmates. Because after all, in the US, blacks live in a society that doesn't let them get away with very much at all. All right, so I wanted this episode today to kind of build upon the last episode that I did on alcohol in the black community. I did that about a month ago or so. In that episode, I presented some research that I had found that basically said blacks start drinking at an older age than their white counterparts. They are less likely to report binge drinking, and in general, they drink less than their white counterparts, but are more likely to report negative health consequences due to their drinking, alcohol related illness and injury and disease, for example, and are more likely to report social problems due to their drinking, for example, legal problems, getting into trouble with the police, familial problems due to drinking. And my thesis for that episode was basically that these discrepancies show and illuminate, among other things, white privilege and systemic racism, in the sense that, why do black people drink less but face worse consequences for their drinking than their white counterparts? And I think it's important to establish that alcohol and substance abuse in general affects different communities differently, right? So focusing on the black community for this episode and why I am comparing them to the white community is because the white community is the dominance community, the dominant group, and the most privileged group in our society. So that's why I'm comparing those two. But yeah, important to establish that substance abuse affects different communities differently. Okay, so moving on. Very special guest for this episode. I was very excited to catch up with Katie from Sober Black Girls Club. She created this club a few years ago, I believe, and she has a massive following on social media. She does a lot of outreach, and yeah, has just basically created this large community of for the Black community. So I was very excited to catch up with her. We talked for a long time and cackled a whole bunch of issues. So here was our conversation. This is Katie from Sober Black Girls Club. All right. So yeah, just starting out, if you want to give a moment to introduce yourself, who are you? Where are you currently? What do you do? And more importantly, well, what prompted the creation of Sober Black Girls Club?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Katie. Yeah, Katie. I'm from Staten Island, New York. I'm an attorney by license practice. I'm trying to like move more into like the sobriety field, maybe opening some type of practice in regards to recovery, et cetera, et cetera. But I am an attorney by degree, practice, license, etc. I said I'm from Staten Island, New York. So what prompted me to start Sober Black Girls Club? I started drinking in college, which was like we'll talk about that more because you brought that up earlier. Like I started drinking in college like a normal. I felt like I did everything right and normal, and that's quote unquote because I since throughout my recovery I learned that like our journeys are not supposed to be compared to, but I did start drinking in college, law school. Looking back at it, I realized that my practices in law school and in college were like abnormal, but it just seemed normal because everyone was doing it. Long story short, I remember it was 2017. I was moving back to the city. I didn't go to law school or college in New York. I went out of state, not out of state, out of city. It was still New York, but out of city, like 8 hours away. And I remember like graduating, like studying for my bar, moving back home. I had a job, I had my own apartment, I had like my dream car, and I was really depressed. I was crazy depressed. And I didn't know it at that time, but through therapy, through getting sober, I realized that I had really low self-esteem and that I based my worth and who I was on my accomplishments. So I was used to being in law school. I was used to like, you know, organizing protests, working 3 jobs, like maintaining an A average, being in a part of a sorority, being a part of this fraternity, this organization. And then when it was time for me to come like live in my adult, sorry, oh my gosh, that was weird. Live
Nice.
my adult life, working a 9 to 5, I couldn't handle it. I just felt worthless and useless. And again, I didn't know at that time, but I had very low self-esteem in who I was. And that just led me to drink, like to led me to drink for about a year. And I thank God because, you know, my my journey is ongoing, but I realized that I had a problem within a year. I realized within a year that this is not normal. Within a year, I had like lost 2 jobs. Within the year, I had couldn't afford my apartment anymore. I couldn't like keep up with my car payment, etc., etc. And that's what led me to create Sober Black Girls Club in October of 2018. I remember I was back at my parents' house. I was miserable. I remember I was Googling on, I'm a millennial, so of course I went online and put like, I didn't know anything about sobriety or recovery, about any of this stuff, because at that time I didn't know anyone with a drinking problem. Now I know a lot of folks who have a drinking problem, but they just never spoke about it, or it was never talked about. But I remember going online, especially Instagram, because that's like my favorite social media platform, and just seeing a lot of these sober spaces that was just really white, skinny, um, happy. And at that point, I was such in a dark space that like if you look at my platform for Super Black Club in 2018 to now, it's so different. Like now it's like lighter colors, like you know, it's more joyful. Back then I was really in a dark space. Like I didn't know if I was gonna even make it to 2019. because I was just so miserable. But because I didn't see any platform that reflected about like what I was going through, that encouraged me to create Sober Black Girls Club, and that's how we started.
Well, congratulations on your sobriety, first of all. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so talking more about your organization. So, Sober Black Girls Club, you're all over social media. You generated a pretty massive following in a very short amount of time. So what is kind of your approach to promoting sobriety in the Black community through your organization?
Okay, so I feel like okay, so I before we got on air or online or whatever, we spoke. You said something that really like it triggered an emotion to me. I think you said something of the nature that like Black folks have all this like we start drinking at a lesser age, at a lesser older age,
Mm-hmm.
for lesser time, but we have all these repercussions. And I am like my story is an epiphany of that. It's of going through societal pressures, trying to be that token person, trying to, striving for that scholarship, striving for that award. And that's has been my own life. Me wanting approval really from white people and wanting that award, wanting to get that scholarship. um, that in 2017, when I graduated from law school, and I was going through addiction when I was studying for the bar. It was bad, and I thought I was gonna fail. I thought I failed because in my head, there's no way I could pass a bar drinking every night. And come to find, I got my score, and I don't marvel at educational awards or whatever, just because education has never been an issue for me. I've always been, what's the word? Just naturally, I don't want to say naturally smart, but I think all of us have. Like my brother, he went to Dartmouth. Like he always had good grades. I always had good grades. Like we just always, it's always been natural. Like just, I don't know. We have Nigerian parents, so it wasn't. It's like, I don't know. I've never like marveled like, oh my god, I got an A. It's like I expected my A. Like
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. But I will be honest. During this time when I was taking the bar, I did not expect to pass because this was the first time where like I was. That's when my drinking problem really took off. Where I was drinking every night. I was very depressed. Um, so it was when I came back to New York City and I realized like, listen, yo, I'm not perfect. It's so crazy. It's like I went to court. I had court that day, and someone from another firm had like left her acceptance letter at the desk that I was working on, and like the amount she was getting paid, I wasn't getting paid that. And I remember like just feeling like shit, like what the hell, feeling unhappy. But at the same time, I was happy that my firm did not require me to work certain hours because I don't want to work like I don't have a personal life, like whatever. And it was just this conflict of just like depending like putting my happiness on things and people and work and this and that, and not like being happy because of like me. And that's when I became like depressed. And to connect that to like Sober Black Girls Club is that when I tried to get sober, at that time I didn't know anyone who was drinking. It took a lot for me to put my story online because it's like even like the Black community, we're just moving to a space where we can talk about mental health. Even now that I'm dating, it's like I don't even want to talk about sobriety to folks who like haven't even addressed their mental health yet. It's like for me in my head, it's just like mental health, sobriety, because the truth is, it's like I was going through things. Later on, I was diagnosed with OCD, which in my head, I thought that OCD was just about cleaning, and it comes to find out it's not. It's about this obsession and composed to be perfect, and I wasn't living up to where I thought I should be, which drove me to drink. So it's like for us right now, our goal is just to educate what does addiction look like in our community, because the thing is that we are all just high. I don't want to say we all are, but I was a high functioning alcoholic. I just didn't know that at the time. At the time, I didn't know that. I wasn't getting fired from jobs, but it took like years for me to like unravel and become unhinged when the big thing like happened. But and I think about it now, I'm like, did all that stuff need to happen? No. I remember I went to the doctor in 2016 I was working at a law firm, an internship in Binghamton, New York, at a law firm, and I remember it was Ramadan, and I'm Muslim, so during Ramadan I don't drink. And I remember it was Ramadan, and I remember I was at my desk, and I started itching, and I was like, "What?" Like, I didn't know, I thought I was like being hexed. I was like, "What the f is this?" Because I was itching all over my body, and I had no idea what was going on. And mind you, I'm at this firm. We're drinking regularly. We're drinking every day. Even before that, I was still drinking regularly and every day. But it wasn't like a problem at that time. I remember I went to doctors for years trying to figure out what causes this itch. It was till later when I got sober and I was like under the supervision of doctors that they said you're having withdrawal symptoms. When you don't drink, you're itching. And I'm like, it made so much sense why during that month when I was doing that internship in Binghamton, when I wasn't drinking, because at that time I was able to like control my drinking. I was drinking a lot, but for me, Ramadan is like the holy month. I'm not drinking during Ramadan. And I didn't drink during that month. And it made so much sense why that month I was itching like crazy. What didn't make sense to me is that I went to go see so many doctors. I had to end my internship short, honestly, to come back to Staten Island, New York City, and go to doctors. And not one doctor can ask me, do you drink? Are you drinking too much? Blah, blah, blah. And I, like, through my experience in this recovery space, it's like, especially Black folks, we expect people with drinking problems to look a certain way. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that we're under a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? We've been pushed back for 400 years, whether or not you want to admit it or not. Like, we are at a disadvantage. And that's the reason why I have struggled with overworking and just making sure that I'm always on point and working hard, blah, 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 because I want my kids to not suffer and live the life that I lived. And I don't want, and my parents came to this country with the hopes that I would not live the life that they lived. And it's this generational, generational trauma that we want to do better for our kids. So we overwork. We want to be accomplished. And honestly, Chase, it's like so surprising how I went literally 3 years not understanding why I would have months. And it was usually during Ramadan, because that was at the time when I wasn't drinking, why I was itching. And I mean, this itch was not a normal itch. Like, I wanted to, literally, I went to the hospital. They would give me like Benadryl. It wouldn't work. So it's like, what is it? And I would do all these tests, and they never, no one knew what it was. It wasn't until I was I was in full blown addiction and I had to go to rehab that they were like, yeah, it's probably a withdrawal symptom.
Wow.
And it made a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think, yeah, I've had that experience to some degree where I was drinking a lot and then a little bit of withdrawals, and it's crazy to see the physical benefits of not drinking. It's insane. And I guess maybe your case is a little more extreme than mine, because I actually never like went to a doctor for that. But yeah, it's definitely, the change is definitely from day to day, thinking where like you were probably 2 years ago to now is like very extreme. It's pretty incredible. And I think you brought up something interesting. You talked about how like in kind of the sober community, and I have definitely observed this, there's not a lot of Black people. It's mostly white people who are on, like, for example, these Facebook groups who are like visible in terms of being successful, like sobriety coaches, authors. Not a lot of diversity kind of that I've experienced sort of in that space. So yeah, so I guess with your organization, what are kind of some of the things that you do specifically? Like, do you have, like, I guess you've had like webinars, you've had chat groups. What are kind of like the events that you put on to reaching people?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And before I answer that, I feel like when I first joined, like I first created Sober Black Girls Club in 2018, now there's so many more Black sober influencers, and I'm really happy. Like, I always tell people, I always get these emails or these DMs like, oh, I want to create this, but I don't want to I don't want to step on your toes. And that's just the mentality we have. I'm like, listen, dude, there could be more than one of us in this space.
Yeah.
Just like there's more than one white influencer, why can't there just be more than one of us? Like, uh, come out. And that's one thing that I will really say. From 2018 to now, I feel like every other day I'm like, they might not have a huge following because they just started, but I feel like every day I go on Instagram, I'm seeing like a new page that's dedicated, and it doesn't have to be just about Black people, maybe dedicated to like folks with like disabilities. That's still an accomplishment, because one, with anything, especially with Instagram, social media, folks, they want, I don't want to say clout, but they want clout. They want fame at some level. You know what I mean? You want people to like look at you. You want people to like, you want to be an influencer, and I get it, all for it. And I feel like with that message, it's like some people have to keep a certain image, and for me, it's like I'm all for exercise, but I'm not for, and I'm not for like sobriety and like fitness. I feel like fitness should be a tool where we can clear our mind, but I'm not for, just sobriety and just skinniness and just like this fitness Instagram culture that I see a lot. And I'm just not for that, because to me it's not real. To me it's like you're leaving one addiction for another, and now you're at the gym 24/7, and you're the gym 24/7. Like you're restricting yourself of certain foods. What if you don't have, like, what if you do have to eat a cheeseburger? Like, are you gonna, like, what's gonna happen? Like, you know what I mean? I'm for holistic shit. And I'm not against fitness. I'm for fitness and I'm for exercising, but I'm not for it when it's just to keep up an image. Because to me, and what's so crazy? I just read this article. What's his name? Zac Efron. Like he experienced addiction, and when he was in this beginning of addiction and he was getting sober, he worked out so much, and he like worked out. He relapsed, and I'm not saying he relapsed because he worked out, but he worked out so much. And then like now he has like these pictures on like online, and folks are like, what happened to your body? And he had to snap back at them and said, listen, that wasn't me trying to keep up an image. Like, now I'm focusing on my sobriety, I'm focusing on my recovery. And me doing that is not me at the gym for 3 hours a day eating only kale. Like, let me be realistic. And I really appreciated that article. It was just like, yes. And I'm not saying that this goes for everyone. It doesn't. But I just feel like, especially online, like, health and wellness is about how you look rather than how you feel. And I don't think that's right. I feel like you're like switching addictions, because then like folks who need your help are going to be like, okay, well, if I go to the gym, I'll be cured. What if you can't? We're in a pandemic. What if you couldn't go to folks have not been able to go to the gym. What are you doing now? Are you going back to the bottle because now you don't have a gym? It's just like, for me, recovery is holistic. It's more than just exercising. It's exercising. It's, finding some sort of therapy. It's getting to know who you are and what bringing you back to yourself. So I know I went on a little rampage, and I don't know what brought me there, but I just felt like I had to get that out of my chest. What was your original question? I'm sorry.
No. I asked you about like what kind of, you kind of answered it, like what kind of things that you do online, like you have like you have like webinars, you have like Skype calls with people, but yeah.
So what we do right now, so we do have a blog that gets published every Sunday. We have a newsletter that gets published. The newsletter is called Sober Night Live, and that get published every Saturday night at 11:30. We do have two support groups. One is on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, my time. And that's for queer folks of color. So queer, Black, Latino, Asian, etc., whatever you call it, color. It's just a space to give them to really focus on their sobriety. And that's another thing about like sober culture. It's just like, when I think about like the space that queer folks need, because the truth is, like, a lot of queer folks battle with so much. It's like they might be battling with like, no, they are battling with like their gender, identity, sex, race. And it's just so crazy how like the lack of resources they have doesn't make sense to me, because if anything, and a lot of the folks that I meet from Sober Black Girls Club, they don't really identify as girls, but they follow me, and because they feel like this is the only resource they have. But why is that when it's like a lot of LGBTQIA folks are suicidal and depressed? And it makes sense why they would be suicidal and depressed. They're going through a lot of shit. And I feel like just the support isn't there because it doesn't look good. It doesn't, and whatever. It doesn't look white. You know what I mean? And it's like sobriety and recovery spaces should be inclusive of, especially for the folks who need it, where it's life or death, where it's like, am I drinking 24/7, or I'm tired of drinking now? I'm just gonna like jump out the window. And the truth is, it sounds harsh, but that's what's happening. And that's what encouraged us to start the Tuesday group, because the LGBTQIA community really is suffering, and I don't feel like they get the help that they need. So that's of anyone of color. And then on Thursday, we have a support group solely for Black women. That's an amazing group. We had it yesterday, which is amazing. It's just an amazing group. Aside from that, we do have a mentorship program. So if you have less than a year of sobriety and you want a mentor, we'll connect you with someone who has more than a year. And we have our funds, like our medical funds and our food funds and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think you're bringing up a really interesting point too, right? So like, I think that, alcoholism, clearly, I think alcoholism is damaging for everyone and all communities, but I think it's definitely, and I think the research supports this, that it's definitely, the stakes are higher in certain communities, in certain more disadvantaged communities, right? Alcoholism affects more drastically, more seriously the Black community than it does the white community, right? So yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point, that there's kind of, I think all influencers who are promoting sobriety and a healthier lifestyle, I think it's great, right? But yeah, there is kind of sort of maybe a lack of self-awareness where it's not like a fad, it's not like a fashion trend. It's actually something that must be taken very seriously, because in other disadvantaged communities, it's actually really harming people to maybe a degree that you're not aware of, or that you don't have to experience yourself, right? So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and that kind of leads me to my next question, which is a big question. But in your opinion, how is the culture surrounding drinking? How is the culture surrounding drinking in general different in the Black community as opposed to the white community in the U.S.?
It's really different. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. Right? I remember I was working as a lawyer, and long story short, the partner of the firm, like the day before we had a Christmas party, and I was still drinking at that time, but I wasn't. I hate the word alcoholic, because it's just like, when were you an alcoholic? I don't know, but whatever. I wasn't in addiction at that time. And long story short, the partner was very aggressive. He was clearly drunk. The next day we had work. He came into the office, drove there, and was slumped in his car. And I had to call another partner and said, listen, like, A, B, and C is like drunk. What's going on? And they all came out. They were like, oh, he gets like this. His wife is calling. Basically, this guy had like a drinking problem. And at that time, I was amazed, because I've never seen anything like this in my life. And at this time, I'm the only Black person a part of this firm. So I'm going inside, and everyone is just cool. I am traumatized. This guy literally drove, and he does not live in the city. So thinking about like the maneuvers he had to do to like get to the firm, it's like, this is scary for me. And I was very traumatized. And I remember my supervisor telling me like, oh no, it's nothing. Like, he does this periodically. It's not a big deal. And in my head, I'm like, what? And in my head, honestly, when she said that, I was like, oh, white people. This is white people shit. This is what they do. Because I've never, ever seen anyone do something like this. And the fact that they're so nonchalant about it, I'm like, this is white people things. Now, let's fast forward 2 years later, where I'm going through my own addiction. And it's like, okay, this is not white people thing, but why did I not know any of this stuff before today? And or this year. And as I started Civil Black Girls Club, I would have folks, people who I know, not just followers, people who I know from my high school, college, law school, be like, Katie, thank you so much for A, B, and C because my dad died of complications from alcoholism, or this happened. And I'm like, why did I not never know this? One, again, it's just that we have, so, especially being Black or being a person of color, you have so much pressure to get things right. Because the truth is, Chase, is that if I would have drove to that firm drunk, they would have fired me on the spot. And that happened
Mm.
to me actually the first time I drank on the job. I literally was in the bathroom. They had a party the day before, and I came back the next day for work. I was already depressed at that time. I went to the bathroom with the bottle, drank. And I remember I came out and my boss was pissing me off and I just told him off. And he was like, are you drunk? Go home. You would really send me home knowing that I'm drunk, knowing that I don't live in this borough? It was just no care. No care of like what was going on. And you can fire me all you want, but the fact is like you just sent me home. I could have gotten into a car accident. There's so many things that could have happened during that time because I was drunk. I wasn't even articulate. I couldn't even form my words. And I know for a fact because I seen it in a different setting. If I was white, that wouldn't have happened. You would have called someone. You would have called my parents. You would have told me to come back inside. You would have done something. You would have been like, okay, can we, rehab something because you knew what was going on. And at that time I didn't know anything about addiction. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was doing the things I was doing, but you knew because when we spoke about it a year later, he said, I'm going to be honest with you, Chase, this whole Black Lives Matter phenomenon is, I say phenomenon because Black Lives Matter has always been a thing for the past 5-6 years, but whatever, has encouraged a lot of my past teachers and employers to reach out to me. And he apologized. He said he was totally wrong. You were wrong. You literally sent me to another borough drunk. And at that time I was like 24 and I probably weighed 100 pounds. Like, are you nuts? Like, I would never do that to anyone because it's so dangerous and it's so wrong. But I know if I was white, they would never have done that. But because I was just their diversity plan, the diversity placement or whatever, I was disposable. I was very disposable. And I think that has a lot to do with like, the black, like alcoholism addiction in the black community. One, we don't know what it looks like because we work so effing hard. We work, and don't get me wrong, you might go to Times Square and see black, white, Chinese, homeless people addicted, but that's what we have to change. That's not majority of the folks who have addiction issues. A lot of folks who have addiction issues are functioning people that don't know that they're having issues. So that's one thing. Just like trying like working extra hard, and then when you get into this environment where they're like, oh, free liquor, I took advantage of it. Why wouldn't I? Like, I'm stressed the hell out. I've been working since I was 15 years old, providing for myself. And I have parents, don't get me wrong, but my parents are very immigrant, I don't want to say immigrant-y, but they're very like African, so they didn't care about the stuff I cared about. Getting my hair done, getting my nails done, looking okay, because they didn't understand the American system. So I literally had to provide for myself while maintaining school, and I did this since I was like 15 years old. So now, when like I'm at the stage where like I can dibble and dabble with alcohol, and it's making me relax, it's making me calm, I'm feeling good, and I haven't felt this good in years. Of course, I'm gonna abuse it. Of course, it's going to feel crazy to me. It's gonna feel good. I was like, what the hell is this feeling? I love it. And people are like, oh, no one drink. No, listen, I'm from a Muslim African family. No one in my family has ever drank. I don't want to say ever because I don't know what they did when they were teenagers, but it's not a thing. You would never find alcohol in my house. Like it was. I didn't grow up with drinking. I grew up going to the mosque 6 days out the week, like praying, like, at one point wearing a hijab, then I stopped. And then I went to school and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And slowly but surely I started to abuse it. And I think with the black community, I think with the difference between like the black community and like um, the white community is that mental health and addiction, I'm not gonna say it's always been accepted in the white community, but it has been accepted way longer than it has been in our community. You know what I'm saying? Like folks, I remember like folks were like, yeah, lawyers have a lot of addiction issues. What lawyers are you talking about? You're talking about white lawyers. I don't know any black lawyer with addiction issue. They probably do have it, but they're not like out talking about it. Like they're not like, you know what I mean? But it's like when I go to these programs for like lawyers that who have addiction issues, which a lot of them do, who are speakers? They're white men. And because it's accepted for them to have these issues. But being a woman or being black and then being black on top of that, it's like we might accept it in the public eye, but we really don't accept it because you're here because you're here to make the company look good. It's a lot of like misogyny, patriarchy, like it's a lot of stuff, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Especially like women who I speak to, they're like, "Yeah, I have a glass at night to unwind." Why do you have to have a glass of wine to unwind? Why can't you go for a walk? Why can't you draw something? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and then again, clearly if you're reaching out to me, I know you're having more than a glass. But I get it. Like, you probably started out with a glass. I get it. Like, you probably started out with a glass, but now it's like maneuvering to something else, and you just don't want to get help for whatever reason. But I think that in like other communities, it's more normalized to get help for their issues. Like when I think about me being in high school, I know a lot of folks who, when their parents got divorced, they went to therapy. Therapy was not normalized in my household. It wasn't normalized in our households. But I will say this, Chase, it's getting better. Like we're getting there. It's getting better.
Yeah. So, why might it be that in the black community, mental health, sobriety, these kind of topics are still considered very taboo, are not accepted? Like, why are these conversations more difficult to find and kind of maintain?
I think white supremacy, and again, I don't even have to. It's not. It's like even. It's like looking into myself. It's just like I'm not even basing this off anyone else. It's just like I'm trying to put this into like proper words. Me and I talk about this a lot in my sobriety journey and my self journey. I was very much indulged in tokenism. And tokenism is the idea of like you're black or you might be gay or you might be whatever, but you're acceptable in culture and community because of how you look, because of where you come from, because of your accent. You have certain privileges that might put you up above other people who might be in your community. And I have acknowledged that I have, I have been a token for a while, and I loved it before I knew what it was, what I was going through. So it's like I've always had good grades. I was always able, we're in Corona now, so I've gained some weight, but like I was always skinny. I was always able. Remember, I told you I worked since I was 14, so I had nice clothes. And I will say this: there has never been a job or scholarship or award that I entered that I had a thought that I wasn't going to win, because I knew that people scratch that. I knew that white people liked me, like, and not me for who I am. They liked this persona that I gave them. And that's why in my first year of like being a lawyer, getting fired like 3 times, I was always able to find another job because I had the grades, I had the look. People liked who I was, like not me, this persona I was giving them. So now I have to acknowledge this. I don't want to say it's kind of privilege, the privilege that I was given. Now let's imagine another person, another girl, another woman who might have been darker skinned, who probably didn't wear their hair straight. Like I wear my hair straight because I just it's and whatever. I know people like, wear your hair straight. That's white supremacy. It might be, but I like wearing my hair straight. Now let's think about like a girl, darker skin, wearing their afro, being who they are in nature, and going into like corporate America, not only corporate America, but even just going to a job interview at McDonald's, we're going to be judged. I know when I go to interviews, I might not say how can I be as right as possible, but let's be real. What is gonna make these folks be comfortable with who I am and who I am? You know what I mean? So like we have to go through all that stuff to even get a job. If I'm going through a problem, I'm not gonna tell my employer that I have this issue. Yeah. And just for me to be judged even more. Or, just to be, it's being scared about being judged or being, we already have this label that America has run with, that Black people are inferior. That is something that we still see every day. Like, that's not something white people might not be saying that anymore, but their actions show that they feel like we are inferior. We see this day in and out. How am I going to trust my employer with my mental health issues? Knowing all this, I'm not. I'm going to suffer in silence. And if that means me staying at my firm till 9 o'clock and then going home and then unwinding until it's no longer unwinding and I was a full-blown addiction, it is what it is. And that's exactly what happens to a lot of people, a lot of folks in our group, so Black Girls Club, and we welcome anyone. I don't care what degree you have. I don't care if you're homeless. We will help you get to the space you need to be in. But as of right now, a lot of the women that we have in our program, they're doctors, they're nurses, they're lawyers who are just tired. They're tired of living this life of pretend, and they have crumbled. And I can totally relate to that because that's exactly what happened to me. But to answer your question, it's taboo because I feel like we already feel like we're being judged. Am I really going to trust you with my mental health issues? And not you per se, but I'm talking about white folks. And when I say white folks, because white folks are in corporate America, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. All the firms I've worked at, I was the only Black person there. And that's due to tokenism. I might not have been the smartest Black applicant who applied for that job, but I might have been the right complexion, the right weight. It's levels to all this stuff. It's a lot of levels, and it's life. It's a society. It's what we go through.
Yeah. So there's definitely a sense of trying so hard, spending so much energy to living up to a certain standard that there's no room for vulnerability. There's no room for. There's no time for it. For I guess complaining, if it's seen like that. Yeah. Wow. And I imagine that extends to mental health as well. Sobriety and mental health, they're pretty similar. What would maybe be some other particular challenges facing the Black community in terms of sobriety? What are some other kind of like obstacles in, I guess, more people becoming aware of their problems or aware of the particular challenges that the Black community is facing? Yeah.
Definitely. And what you said before, okay, I'll say this. I remember I got fired from my job. I was like, I need help, but I didn't know what was going on with me at that time. I didn't know what was going on. I remember, I'll be straight up honest. At that time, I wasn't taking care of my physical appearance, so I wasn't doing my hair. I was depressed, and I looked a mess. And I remember going into a doctor's office and like telling them I need help. Like, I don't know what it is I need, but I need help. And I remember that same day, that woman said I was bipolar. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because in my head, like, bipolar, you're manic. Like, and I've never been manic. I've never had a burst of energy. And I think this is one of, and truthfully, Chase, I work with a lot of women who are nurses, and they tell me this all the time, that this is why they're so scared of getting help. It's because of this constant stigma that, like, and not to say that people who have bipolarism are crazy, but it's this constant stigma of labeling Black people as nuts or crazy or whatever. And that's what happened to me. And it wasn't until a year later, I remember I went to go see another doctor because that's when I went to rehab. And she said, the lady was like, you don't have no damn bipolar. You have depression, anxiety, OCD. Like, you have issues, but you're not bipolar. And she was telling me that a doctor cannot diagnose you with bipolarism in a day. That makes no sense. This doctor was able to diagnose me because she has watched me while I was in rehab, and she said I wasn't bipolar. She said there's nothing about you that like would tell me that you had bipolarism. And I remember I went back to that doctor, and at that time I was better. I just came out of rehab, so I was like better. I was dressing, I was taking showers again, like I was grooming myself, like acting like a normal person. Normal person is not the word, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. I was I was doing what I had to do in life. Back to that doctor, and I was like, because so crazy. They told me to go to outpatient there. They wanted me to continue my outpatient services at the same place where I met this woman. And I remember she was like, oh my God, you look better. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to see you again though. Like, you're not the doctor I came here for. Like, you literally told me I was bipolar after meeting me for 20 minutes. And here I had this doctor saying that there's no possible way you could have diagnosed me with bipolarism. And not only that, I knew I wasn't bipolar. Like, I'm not, I never had manic episodes ever in my life. And you didn't know I was a lawyer because I didn't tell her I was a lawyer because I was embarrassed about my situation. I didn't tell her anything about me. But you did things that I see every day of just really being racist and being discriminatory because you had no business putting me on those medications, telling me I was bipolar because I knew I wasn't bipolar. I work with folks who have bipolarism for you call it, not per diem, when you have to do work for whatever that term is. I forgot, I can't remember. But like, I have worked with people not charging. I have worked
pro bono.
Pro bono, exactly.
Yeah.
Great. And I have had clients who have had bipolarism, and I knew I wasn't bipolar, but you looked at me and you literally judged me, and then you said, you were bipolar. And then it's like, is this new? No. What about when AIDS first came about? We were being experimented on. What about the Tuskegee experiment? If you could look into that, where people were being experimented on for having syphilis or something like that. I remember that whole story. And there's this history in America where Black folks are constantly being misdiagnosed. Why would I go to professional help asking you for help when I know you're just going to judge me? And even before that, I even show you a story, Chase, with your followers who, I can't wait until I can talk about it in detail because it's still very hurtful for me. I remember I was applying to go to law school. I already got to law school, and I had to do a physical. For law school, you had to do a physical. And at that time, I was working for the AmeriCorps. So I had a very bad, rigorous schedule. AmeriCorps, you're working night to day to night. And I had to see a doctor who was not in my borough, a doctor who I didn't know. But I was like, I need to get my physical done for law school. So I went to go see her. And I remember getting tested. And this is so embarrassing to say, but I'm trying to open my way for me to talk about it more, because this is why mental health is so taboo in our community. So I remember I went to go see, I took the test for the law school physical exam. And she said I had hepatitis. I don't remember what hepatitis. I don't know if it was B or C, whatever she said I had. And in my head, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about hepatitis B or C. But she said that I had to come back in 4 weeks, that she could not sign my physical. So I'm over here. I'm like, am I not going to go to law school? I'm depressed. I'm sad. I'm very depressed. I came home. My parents looked at me like, you're dumb. You do not have hepatitis C or B. Whatever. I don't remember if it was C or B, she said. I don't remember what it was. But it was whatever hepatitis that people confuse of a fly, feces. Whatever hepatitis that is, she said that I had it. There's this hepatitis where you get it from eating feces or whatever. And this happened a long time ago, so I'm not clear on whether it was C or B, but whatever. It was hepatitis, whatever. And at that time, was I having sex? I was having sex, actually, but with the same partner, the guy I lost my virginity with. So in my head, it was just very foreign because I wasn't having sex with other people. I've been having sex with this guy for 4 years. He was my first, my only, and it was just very confusing. He looked at me and said I was dumb. He said, you don't have it. And everyone knew I didn't have it, but me, I'm like, no, I do have it. Now let's fast forward maybe 2 weeks. I had an appointment with my gastrologist. Um, and I remember I went to go see him, and he's some white tall guy, very kind. You know, I love him. I've been seeing him since I was young, my gastrologist. And I told him what they said, and he was like, "You do not have hepatitis C or B or C, whatever it was." And I was like, "Well, she said I did. She doesn't want to sign my papers." And she said, "No, you do not have it." And he said, "Listen, I'm gonna get your records from your pediatrician." And he said, like, what I think is happening is that they saw the antibodies from your vaccine, and that's what she's basing it on. And I was like, what do you mean by antibodies? So now I'm going home, I'm looking up. Oh, okay. So when you have vaccines, they put antibodies in you, and that's how it shows up that you have that something is present in you. It doesn't mean that you have had something. So then he called me like a week later, and he's like, yeah, you don't have it. He said, come and let's do the test for sure. But he said like what she probably saw was the antibodies and probably thought that you did have it at that same time at some point. But really you have it because you had your vaccines. I have your records here. It's the vaccines, the antibodies and the vaccines in you. Chase, when I tell you I was ready, I was so ready to beat that lady up. I literally went to my gastrologist, got my record that he gave me, and proved that I never had the disease. That what she saw in me was like it was the antibodies. Like if you have the flu, you will have the antibodies in you from the shot, or if you survived it, because that means your body has built the antibodies because you survived the flu. It's just regular knowledge that I never had because I'm not a science person and I don't care about any of this stuff. I just get my shots and I go about my business. So I remember I went back to her office and I was like, I need to speak to you right now. And she was like, what? And I was like, you literally told me that I had hepatitis, and come to find out, bitch, I don't have hepatitis. I had the fucking, excuse my language, I get mad when I talk about this. I had the antibodies in me because I had the vaccine. Look at my vaccine history. And she was like, oh, she didn't have it. I said, oh, you never asked. You never, ever, ever said, can I see your vaccine history from your pediatrician? I was like, it took my gastrologist 1 minute to connect the dots and said, no, you don't have it. It's probably you probably have the vaccine, your history. But because you are so damn racist that you thought because I'm African and you looked at my last name, you looked at, but like, you know, you asked, and she did ask me, she said, oh, do you should go to Africa regularly? And I said, yeah, I do. But even when I go, I still get my shots. Like, hello, my parents give me my parents are working people. Like, we have insurance. I get my shots. Like, I have never lacked. I went to private school my whole life. I've never lacked anything. You decided to and you decided to put me into this bubble, and the fact that you saw that it was antibodies, so you knew that it must have, either I must have had it, but it passed because that's the only way you can get antibodies, or the vaccine. But you knew at that moment that I did not have it, and you scared the living shit out of me. And she was just like, oh, I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I literally just freaked the fuck out. I literally made the cops were called. And, you know, at that moment, I felt bad. I felt bad. But now I look at it, I'm like, no, this bitch really tried to, give me a health crisis. Like, you literally scared the hell out of me. And I know I'm rambling because Chase, that's, really one of the most traumatic experiences that I had with, doctors and medical professionals, and that's why I don't trust them. So if me, a person who whatever, education is not the end all be all, but I'm not dumb. I'm very intelligent, and even a person with me and my knowledge and experience don't trust professionals. How can I look at another black person and be like, trust them? No, they're liars. They do these crazy things. Look at the statistics now of how many, this is CNN just published a story about black children who are babies who are produced from white doctors are 3 times likely to die than white babies. And I believe it. If I didn't go through what I went through, I probably would be a little skeptical and be like, all right, calm down, relax. No, I believe it. I've been subjected to their racism. And I think that has a lot to do with it being taboo. Am I really an alcoholic, or you just trying to label me alcoholic so you can get clients? Am I really bipolar, or are you labeling me bipolar because you're just racist? I don't know.
Wow.
I know I'm sorry.
No. I'm just trying to collect all of that. Yeah, that, honestly, I think you're hitting on something that's so disturbing and but also so important. And that's something that I personally, I'm not too proud to admit that I hadn't really considered that until very recently, because, like you said, there are a lot of stories coming out about Black people sort of kind of voicing their experiences going to doctors and trying to seek out medical care and facing situations where they didn't feel like their lives were important, and facing situations where they felt like there was a lot of negligence and where their lives were actually put in danger. Um, and that's something that I hadn't even wasn't even aware of that being a concern until very recently. And I never considered that in this context, in the context of alcoholism, because it sounds like, right. I mean, like, why would somebody show up? Why would somebody, um, yeah, try to get help, right? Try to get treatment, even admit to themselves, in the mirror, maybe I have a problem, if they think that how they're going to be treated if they get help is in a way that's not going to be at all helpful to them and might be even more damaging. Am I kind of on the right track with that?
No, no, you definitely. And I
Okay.
will say that when I went to rehab, um, remember I went to rehab, and I remember the doctors found out that I was like a lawyer, and then in the rehab I went to, they have a medical school, yeah,
Yeah.
and they were using me for like rotations. They were like, "Oh, do you mind sitting in and having these students talk to you?"
Hmm.
And it's like, again, that's classism, that's elitism. You're only letting me sleep in, and that's why when I left rehab, I didn't think I had a problem, because it didn't seem like these people thought I had a problem either.
Mm.
They were allowing me to sleep in. They were allowing me to attend classes with these students who are on rotation for mental health, abuse, whatever. Like, is it rotations? Yeah, rotations. They were allowing me to like work with them. So I felt like I was doing God's work. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not just only race is a huge part of it, but it's also, elitism. I know when I don't wear makeup, when I don't have my hair together, when I'm not looking A1, like how you see me on my Instagram page, I know that I'm gonna expect to be treated lesser. I know if I just come out, like go outside, going to like CVS, maybe wearing some sweats, no makeup on, maybe my hair's roughed up, whatever, like whatever reason, I can literally pinpoint the difference. But why does that matter how I look? Like, what does that have to do with why I am here? So I feel like, my experience has definitely, and you're not the only one. Like, it's so crazy how I literally about this with my friend the other day, like how like I have to check myself sometime, because it's like, even like with the Megan Stallion, I don't know if you've heard about that whole thing with Tory Lane shooting her. It's like, I love Tory. You're shooting her leg. You heard about
I
that?
didn't hear about that.
That Megan the Stallion and Tory Lane's.
Yeah, I know where they are, but I didn't
Yeah,
know somebody got
you
shot.
look kind of black, so I'm just like kind of confused. I don't know, like what is your nationality?
I'm actually half Chinese.
Huh?
I'm half Chinese. My
Oh, okay.
dad, yeah,
And what?
and my dad is like Chinese. His whole side of the family is Chinese, and my mom is white.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you haven't heard about it, but I had to check myself because I give men always the benefit of the doubt, knowing that we have a history of men being patriarchal, misogynist. And I don't know if you know who Megan Thee Stallion
I
is
do.
or Tory Lanez is. Tory Lane shot Megan, and it was so hard for me to even accept it. I was like, Tory, I love Tory, but it's like, as a culture, as a system, as a community, as a society, as a nation, we're so conditioned to see people certain ways, and we have to acknowledge that. Like, even me, I have to check myself. Even today, this morning, I was speaking to some girl, and she was telling me about her friend who has an addiction issue. Blah blah blah. We're trying to get her this help. I spoke to the girl yesterday, and I mean, I wasn't in the best mood last night, and she just like, I feel like everything I was saying, she just had like a negative. She was so like hopeless, and she, it just sounded like anything I would say to her to give her hope, she would just shut it down. And like I was telling her friend, I was like, you know what, like some people like that need to maybe blah 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 blah. The truth is, I was having biases because I have experienced people who are hopeless. Doesn't mean she's gonna be hopeless. Like the truth is, when we spoke last night, she was still drinking. So I don't really know how she really feels when she's sober state. But again, I was using like my own bias to judge this woman and be like, listen, she needs professional help beyond what I can give her. Have I even tried to work with her for me to really figure that out? No. I'm basing this on one conversation where I know this girl was drinking. She was drunk. I don't even know if this is who she truly is when she's not drunk. But again, it's biases. It's like, even especially in our community, the Black community, you know, men do something to women, and we're like R. Kelly. We coddle the men. It's like, oh, did that really happen? How much information more do you need for you to say that this really happened? It did happen. Like these women are not making it up. So yeah, no, I get it. I have a lot of biases that I have to check. And whether it's because of my education system, whether it's because of how I look, whether it's because of whatever, I know that like my experience is not the end all be all. I know that my experience is not the average experience, that folks do go through different things that I haven't been able to go through because of whatever privilege has been there. So no, I totally get it. And my problem with like with white folks who, it's like, okay, you might have been racist in the past. You might have seen it A, B, and C. But now that we're presenting you this information and you're still so unwilling to change your idea, that's when it's like, okay, so you're just racist. There's nothing else to it. And again, I remember I was at another, I was speaking with Recovery Happy Hour. I remember I was looking at my journal from like high school and like junior high school. I've said so many like disturbing things. I remember I said a whole bunch of stuff about Mexican people, and it was like how did you even get, like, where did this even come from? You know what I mean? But it's okay as long as you're changing your mindset and you're making good on the harm that you have done. I mean, it was just my journal. I didn't do harm to anyone, but it was my journal, still my mindset. But okay, I've learned to change my mindset. I've learned to know that what I was writing about them taking our jobs is really untrue. I'm a lawyer. Ain't nobody ever taking my job. Like, you know what I mean? There's just, I don't know even where I got that mindset. But like, especially in the recovery issue, I'm the recovery field, and I'm going to rampage. I'm going to end real quick. It's just like, okay, so you might have done A, B, and C. Like, for example, AA. Are you part of AA?
No, not currently.
All right. Like AA, them like, oh, we don't talk about race because it's political. My race is not political. my race may be uncomfortable for you as a white person because of all the harm your people have done, but me being Black is not political. And me wanting to talk about it because it does affect my recovery. Recovery is about trauma. Yeah. It's not political. And for me, it's like when you have all this evidence to prove this to your community, to your organization, and you're still like, no, we're not talking about race, it's political. That's when I'm done. It's like, you're just an idiot. Like, I can't reason with you because you're and we try not. I know white people think Black people use the word racist a lot. I know Black people think white people don't use racist enough. But that's just racism. It's like you literally are not seeing the humanity in my race. You're not seeing how how these killings, how the politics is affecting me as a person in my recovery. And that is racism, because you're not seeing me as a human being. You're seeing me as a political entity. So yeah, I know I went on a little rampage because I just have a lot to say, but that's one of the multiple reasons why in the Black community we're just so hesitant to talk about mental health, to talk about sobriety, to talk about recovery, because it's just, I don't want to be vulnerable to you and you don't even care. You're not going to understand. What's the point?
Yeah, and I think, recovery has to be individualized, right? Um I think everyone's recovery is different, which means that race and culture and all of these factors have to be a part of the discussion, right? Because like I think it's pretty obvious, um, especially after reading what I have read and having these discussions, that sobriety is different in every single community. So to like dismiss that part and say that doesn't get to be a part of the conversation because we don't want to have the conversation, that's not helpful at all, and that is racist. That is in effect racist.
Yeah.
And not yeah, and also not only racist, it's going to limit a lot of people's recovery because you're
It,
only catering to this community and this type of person, right?
yeah.
So yeah, no, I think you're right on the money with that. And what you were saying earlier kind of leads into my next question. Are we good on time? Do you have any meetings coming up? Because I'm good.
Now you're my last one. You
Okay,
were my last one.
I'm your
Yeah.
last meeting. Okay, excellent. How, in your opinion, what is kind of the experience of sobriety amongst Black women? How is it different from the experience with Black men?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so for Black women, I feel like, I mean, it's so crazy, James, that we have this conversation because it's like I was actually having a conversation last night with my friend, and it's so crazy. Okay, so it's I just feel like men are not relatable. They're not emotionally. I don't want to say stable. That's the wrong word, but I don't think that they're emotionally in tune into the same um level as women are. And it's so crazy how like I've always been bisexual my whole life. And it wasn't until I got sober that I just started dating women. And it's not because I don't like men, but it's just that now that I'm in my stage in my life, am I gonna go backwards to help you become emotionally in tune? For you to go, am I gonna have to pressure you to go into therapy? Am I gonna have to pressure you to handle your demons? Am I gonna pressure you to do A, B, and C? And I don't know what it is, but for the most part, and don't get me wrong, women go through addiction. Duh, like I have a whole um, following of women who are in addiction, but they're willing to put in the work to understand what they're going through. And I just feel like men, especially Black men, have this ego about them. And we all have egos, but have this ego about them where they have to be strong. They have to be on point. They have to do A, B, and C. But the thing is that they have this perception that they have to do all this stuff, but they're not doing it. And it's so crazy how like I literally came had this conversation with my friend last night, and it was just like this. Back in the day, we expected our men, and I can only speak for Black community because I'm Black. I'm not anything else. I don't know what other people do in their community, but in my community, we had this expectation of Black men. Um, you know, they get the jobs, they work, they bring in the bread, and I don't want to say because I never thought of myself as a housewife, but like our job is to like tend to the home matters and to like I don't say not work because we still work, but like raise the kids and blah blah blah. And it's like now we can't even do that because it's like Black women are like the demographic with the folks who have the most degrees, the highest degrees. It's like if I date a guy right now, he's not making more than me. Most likely he's not. It would be amazing if he was, but most likely he's not making more than me, and which is okay. But I think just like but and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that like the status quo, the family quo that has been ingrained in the Black community has deterred them from like getting the help that they need. And I think that with like Black women, it's just like, especially Black women, we have this whole thing where, strong Black woman. And now I'm seeing more and more likely, no, we don't want to be strong. I don't want to be strong for anyone but myself. Like I go through my own problems. I don't want to be strong for you. I need to be strong for myself. And I think that like just Black women in general, like we're just like how white folks are have been moving towards mental health, getting sobriety, wellness, doing yoga, meditating. Black women are right behind them trying to take note. This, okay, so I might not have grown up doing yoga or meditating, but they have benefits for my health. And even though I might not have been growing up doing this, I'm going to try to do this, thinking that it's going to help me. I might try to go back and to go into yoga, into therapy. It's going to help me. We're right behind white folks. I don't want to say white women. I don't know about what white men are doing, but we're right behind white women, and taking that lead. Like, yeah, we deserve health and wellness too, not just you guys. We deserve it also. I think that Black men are just, hopefully they'll get to that space, but they're not in that space yet. They're just not. And that's why it's just so hard. Like, we're like, oh, you don't like men anymore? No, I love men. But it's when I'm at such a different level, and like my thinking and it's too hard to just go back down there when it's like you have issues, which is okay. It's fine. We all have issues. You've been through A, B, and C in your life. But can you get help? Can you focus on recovering? And recovery is not just about drinking. Recovery is about trauma. Recovery it's a life journey. We all need to go through some recovery, especially if you've been through something traumatic. And I think that that's just the disconnect between like Black men and Black women in regards to sobriety, mental health, and it's not their fault. Like, we've been conditioned to work. But I think that Black women are finally seeing their worth, and they're saying, I don't want to be the strong Black woman anymore. I want to be vulnerable. I want to cry. I want to have someone coddle me, to hold me for a second, to be soft. We've acknowledged that. I've acknowledged that. If you see my high school yearbook, my quote was something strong Black woman. I don't use strong to describe myself anymore because I don't want to be strong. Like, I don't like. I want to be resilient and successful, but I don't want to be strong in a sense where I can go through all this trauma and abuse and no one gives a fuck about me because they think I'm strong and they think I can like handle it. No, I don't want that anymore. So that's just like the difference that I'm seeing between Black men and Black women. That's actually a really good question.
Yeah. No, yeah. No, and what do you think could maybe be done to kind of like bridge the gap there and kind of start growing that conversation in the entire community? Because you've obviously been very successful in terms of like your niche, right? Your target audience, starting this conversation. How can you kind of expand it outwards a little bit?
I think they just need representation. Even though we're still a Black Club, we have a lot of more Latino men than Black men. I don't have a lot of Black men reaching out to me, but I have a lot of Latino men saying, like, listen, I need help finding a sponsor or blah, blah, blah. And I think they just need representation. I just feel like in the beginning of Silver Black Club, I wasn't really transparent in who I was. I just wrote, but there was no face on my blog or anything like that. Now a year later, I realized like it's so important for people to see my face because, sorry, I told you I had to go see a gastrologist. I have like a lot, what do you call it? GERD, whatever that nonsense is. Which includes alcoholism, like the acid, whatever. Anyways, so yeah, I burp a lot. I apologize.
No worries.
I feel like representation is important. Like, folks need to understand that like what they're going through in terms of alcoholism or addiction or mental health. You're not the only one. You're really not. Like, your story is special, but it's not. I don't know if that's the right word, unique. I always tell people, you're not the only one. Like, this is not the first time I've heard this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Like, your story is not science. I don't know. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. As if, like, I just feel like sometimes when I first started, a lot of girls really were surprised that I was sharing my story. They're like, oh, I never knew anyone else went through this. Girl, a lot of people go through this. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't know people went through what I was going through until I made Silver Backlist Club, and then I have all these people, especially people with like blue checks on the Instagram page, coming to me saying, listen, I went through this, or my father went through this. And I was like, what? Like, oh my gosh. And I think that Black men need their own space to be vulnerable within each other. they need representation.
Yeah.
So even if it only takes like, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been waiting for somebody to create a sober black men club, but I haven't seen it yet. But I've been waiting for it because I think that's really going to open the door, change the game, allow folks to see that they can be vulnerable, they can admit to this. This is not unique to the world. Like folks go through this, like white, black, whatever. We all go through this. You know, how we're treated and how we recover is different. I will admit to that. But okay, you're addicted. Billions of people around the world are addicted. We all have issues. It's not anything unique to the human experience.
Yeah. I will definitely keep my eyes out for you if I see something like that on social media or some organization doing that. But yeah, I haven't come across anyone doing that quite yet. I just wanted to kind of circle back to something to kind of wrap things up here. And I hope this is not too big of a question, but you said something earlier that kind of stuck out in my mind. When like you told the story of your boss who was drunk, right? Like white guy who was drunk, and you said like that's white people shit, right? And I think there's something really important to kind of learn from that, right? Because in my experience, and that's actually something that I speak a little bit on this podcast, is like when I was in high school, when we did have parties, when it was kind of like a mixed crowd, when there was like white kids and black kids and whoever else, definitely had the experience of like the white kids drinking a lot, kind of doing whatever the fuck they wanted, right? Just being happy and crazy. And I distinctly remember a lot of the black kids were just so much more calm, so much more mellow. Maybe they had a couple beers, maybe they smoked a little bit, but just really like put together and composed. And it was something that everybody was kind of aware of, right? At the party. And I remember at the time I didn't really get it. I was like, well, you guys like don't want to drink? Like, what's up? Like, I didn't really understand like what was the cause for that kind of discrepancy, right? Now, kind of knowing what I do know now, and knowing that, you know, like we've talked about, black people suffer worse health consequences, more social consequences. They're liable to get stopped by the police. And if you're drunk and you get stopped by the police and you're black, maybe not the best situation, obviously. Like understanding that now. So is that kind of consistent with your story? Because I know you said you went to private school, you went to college. Is that experience is my kind of recollections consistent with like your experience in kind of the difference between how it was to be a white person and be drinking and doing whatever the fuck, and being black and being like, well, I can't because there will be significant consequences for me if I do?
Jace, what you just said is 100% on point.
Yeah.
But I will say that your recollection is not into my experience because, like I said, growing up, I did have a lot of privilege. Like I was born and raised in a predominantly white borough, the only borough who voted for Trump. I went to private school. I do have this accent that people always say, look, I sound like a white girl. I was the one who got my hair done all the time, nails done. I had a nice car. I had nice clothes. So you're so on point. I grew up for a while thinking I was untouchable because of my tokenism, this idea that I was better than the other black people. And that's a huge part of my story. Me thinking that I was different and I was better and I was special. Chase, when I tell you how there were so many times where I actually got stopped by police in my youth, in my younger days. I mean, I'm still young, but like, and when I was in college, law school, drunk as cop. I remember one time, even when I think about it, I shiver. I get chills. I remember one time a cop was stopping me, and I opened the door because I was so drunk. I was so stupid. I opened the door because I didn't know why I was getting stopped. I was drunk, but I wasn't driving. Well, maybe I don't know, whatever. But I opened the door, and he says, "No, don't open the door. Go back in." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I went back in, and he let me go. You hear stories now. I could have been shot. Just when a cop stops you, you're not supposed to get out the car. They don't know what you're gonna do. I could have been killed that night. But because of the car I was driving, the neighborhood I was in, um, he did see I was coming from a wedding, so he saw the flowers in my car. He like was like, "What are you doing? Why are you getting out the car?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know why. I didn't know why you stopping me. I made it some lie." When I tell you, Chase, how I always tell people, I should have had maybe 13 arrests on me because of shit I did when I was in active addiction. I did a lot of bad shit, stuff that could have harmed other people, that could have really, hurt me. But God has always spared His mercy on me. And just take it away from God, it's just like I've always been spared in public eye because people of society, like the cops or, they just would always let me go. I remember coming from the Queens. I was coming from a party. I was drunk. He got stopped, and the cop, a white guy, was just like, "Where you going?" I was like, I'm going to Staten Island. And he was like, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "I'm coming from a party." He looked at me, and he said, "Go." Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I have to acknowledge that, and that's why I'm so like. I'm so like big on like focusing on recovery, not working out, not doing blah blah. Get to figure out who you are, because I had an identity crisis. People were treating me a certain way because of how I presented to myself to them, but that wasn't in my natural state. It wasn't natural. It wasn't who I was naturally. It wasn't who I was when I wake up out of bed. Even if I brush my teeth, take a shower, that's not really me. This is me really taking 2 hours to get ready to appease you, appease society. So what you're saying is on point. Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends who are darker skinned, may not have like what do you call it? Not professional. Yeah. Well, no, what's that professional? It's not professional. What's that word? Like doctor, lawyer careers. I forgot the word I'm looking for.
It's very I don't know. Very white collar. Very
yeah, white collar.
Yeah.
They are very, very careful, like when they do shit. And I remember, like, it's so crazy how I was always the crazy person. My friends always thought I was a daredevil. You're so crazy. Oh, you get away with this, blah blah blah. And at that time, because we didn't know any better, we coupled it with me being adventurous and crazy and a daredevil. But really, no, I was just taking my experience about how people treated me and using it for my advantage to do other bad shit. You know what I mean? So, from me personally, that has never been my case. I've always like been the wild girl, the wild friend, the one who gets my friends out of trouble, the fast talker, such and such. But when I think about my friends and how like they're very like, oh no, I gotta pay this credit card on time. I have to. Let's get an Uber. I'll come pick up my car. I never did that shit. I never said I'm gonna pick up my car. Like, no, I'm taking my car back home right now with me. They're like, no, we gotta get an Uber. They were very, very particular. Oh, look, no, we're not gonna go through that neighborhood. I'm like, are you dumb? Okay. Going through that neighborhood. I'm not taking another way. But that was just me not really assessing the situation and how similar our lives were, but really how different our lives were. So what you're saying is 100% on point. Yeah.
Because it seems like there's always that other consideration. There's always like, well, because like, when I was getting drunk and when I was, driving drunk and all that stuff, I was always like, well, I could get a DUI, yeah. But I wasn't scared of what would happen if the cops pulled me over per se. I was scared of like getting the DUI, but I wasn't scared of how I would be treated or if something actually bad was going to happen to me. It was never like an extra fear consideration. And so, and I think a lot of people who, I went to school with, for example, can attest to that. We kind of did whatever we wanted, and there was never other considerations. You know what I mean? And that for me is privilege in itself. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of interesting thoughts brought up. Thank you so much for your time. Oh my goodness. Before I let you go, would you just want to give your social media information? How do we get in touch with you, etc.?
Yeah. And before I go into that, I just want to say, like, you're so right. Like, even when I got like tickets in law school, I worked for a firm. I went to a law school in a city that was very small than Staten Island, where I'm from. And because tokenism, like I would get tickets, I would never have to pay for them
Mm.
because it was like I would have like my teacher write me a letter for the judge. They knew each other. It was such a small town, and it's like yeah, like that's why when I tell my story, I always have to give a disclaimer that this is not the standard Black experience because I
Mm.
did have a lot of privilege and grace from God where there's things I did that I could have been in jail. I
Yeah.
could have, I deserved to be. I deserved at that time, not now because I'm a good person, but like, to be in jail. So yeah, thank you for you asked amazing questions. So thank you for that. In terms of social media, yeah, okay. So we can go. We're we're on every platform to be honest. All you have to do is probably type in sober black girls. Either like on Twitter you can't write sober black girls club. It was not enough characters, so we're sober black girls. On Facebook we're sober black girls club. On Instagram sober black girls club. LinkedIn sober black girls clubs. We have our own website where you can get any and every information that you have. Whatever we're doing, event, a fundraiser, a course. Right now, we're doing a journaling course. You can find that information on the website. It's just all there. But if you just Google Silver Black Girls Club, all our information will come out.
All right. Wow. Yeah. So I think Katie said so many meaningful things in sharing her story in this conversation. And it really kind of got me thinking. Like, first of all, in allyship, not everybody in a marginalized group wants to talk to you, has time to talk to you, and feels that they need your help in some way, right? And that's definitely their right. And one cannot be disappointed when somebody who's trying to be an ally is not given an opportunity to do so. But with that said, when you know somebody really takes a lot of time to open up to you and share their stories and their thoughts, it really is a gift and it really is an opportunity for a lot of learning and understanding. So with that said, I really want to thank Katie for her time and really, opening up and sharing some difficult things to talk about and some hurtful things that happened to her and some difficult moments in her life. Um, so yes, major thanks to her for that. So many things. I mean, we could, you know, continue this episode on. I mean, we will continue this discussion, and I could talk for hours about breaking down all the stuff that she said and what kind of impacted me the most. But I will reflect on one thing. I think her just reflecting on her experiences about the pressure she felt as a black woman in in a white collar industry, trying so hard to live up to these standards left by society on her, onto black people, and how damaging that is, and how much effort it took on a constant basis, and still probably, and still, yeah, requires on a constant basis, um, to live up to those things. And I guess the damaging nature of tokenization, something that I think we're still kind of right now learning a lot about. Tokenization meaning you have somebody from, I don't know, a marginalized group, and or a person of color, for example, and kind of pointing out their best qualities, their quote unquote best qualities, and then immediately putting them into sort of this archetype, right? Putting them into this box of what they are. For example, token Asian, right? It's a very common kind of archetype, right? Smart, docile, submissive, good at math, right? Token black person, kind of the same things. Hard worker, doesn't ask too many questions, doesn't is really just there to kind of please everyone and make everyone feel comfortable. And the problem about what it does and the danger about what it does is it doesn't allow people like that to be fully fleshed out and fully realized human beings, to have, share and act out on their full range of human emotions. to at times not be perfect, to at times be mad, to be sad, to be angry, to be inappropriate, right? Um, it doesn't leave space for people like that to do those things, and they get reprimanded for it when it happens. Perfect example is when Katie was talking about how she worked at a one of her first jobs at a law firm when she was kind of the token black girl around the office, and the first time that she got drunk and was a little bit inappropriate, she got fired. That's exactly the dangerous nature of tokenization. And it is a form of racism. It's not good to put people into these boxes, even if it is based on good qualities that they may possess. Okay, because it is reducing them to something that perhaps they are not, and they shouldn't have to do that. So it is racism, and something to really be aware of, I think, moving forward. And what does that have to do? What does any of this have to do with alcohol and sobriety, for example, you might ask? And it has everything to do with that, because we need to create opportunities and space for people from marginalized groups to share their problems, right? And say, yeah, I have a substance abuse problem. I have a problem with alcohol, and not to see it so much as a character flaw, right? Or something that is going to damage their professional status, right? And damage, their lives and their careers. Um, we got to give people a break in I guess in simpler terms. And we will never be able to accomplish that as a society until we stop putting people into boxes and trying to define what they should and should not be. All right, final thoughts for this episode. Thank you for sticking with us. And I never want to get too far off the topic of alcohol and recovery, but reflecting on the conversation with Katie and her stories, I just can't help but again be struck on, how perverse of a society we kind of live in so many ways. Um, More specifically, Katie, she's telling her experiences of trying so hard to live up to these standards set by white America, how damaging that's been for her, how difficult that is. And I think that's a shared experience in the black community. But on the other hand, how we absolutely just consume black culture and are obsessed with black culture and have been for such a long time. Black art, black music, black talent, in a general sense. Some of the great athletes that we absolutely worship, some of the great actors that we absolutely worship, right? And to take it a step further, I mean, the appropriation of black culture, which is just constant. Every year, there's another, I don't know, I don't know what you call these, like hip hop, like dance fads or something, like the whip nene, the doogie, all these things that white kids just go crazy for, right? And that's just a small example. I mean, the appropriation of black culture is massive, and the consumption of black culture is massive, not only in the U.S. but around the world. And how hypocritical is it for us to consume this culture, which is fabulous, right? Which brings so much joy and creativity into the world, yet then punish people from that same community for not living up to white standards. And I think that today in the year 2020, Black Lives Matter encompasses that as well. I think it's not just a fight against violence at the hands of white America and the police, law enforcement, at black people, but it's also a recognition of white supremacy, saying that it does exist, and it's a recognition of the daily obstacles and traumas that black people are forced to go through living in our society, right? It's not just an indictment of the stuff that ends up on the news. It is also the recognition and therefore preservation of black life and blackness in all of its different forms, shapes and forms, and facets. Um, that is my opinion. If I'm incorrect, please let me know. And if you have a different take on these issues, please let me know. stonecoldmoderation.com. Please get in touch with me. But I definitely look forward to continuing this conversation on this program. Malcolm X once said, "You can't separate peace from freedom because no one can be at peace until he has freedom." This has been the Stone Cold Moderation Podcast with Chase Lee. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out the complete show notes of this episode on stonecoldmoderation.com, where you can learn more about us. For access to more content, please subscribe to our YouTube channels and check us out on all other social media platforms.